In a historic legal win for the families, an Information Tribunal has ordered the Chief Constable of Police Service Northern Ireland to hand over evidence and police files regarding the McGurk's Bar massacre. This followed a freedom of information battle that has lasted over 4 years. Nevertheless, the PSNI has been allowed to redact much of the information and withhold other articles of evidence it has hidden for decades. My name is Ciarán MacAirt and I am a grandson of 2 of the McGurk's Bar victims. My grandmother Kathleen Irvine was one of 15 civilians murdered in McGurk's Bar on 4th of December 1971. 2 children were among the dead. My grandfather John was badly injured but among the few who survived the no-warning bomb attack by British extremists. Before my grandmother's remains were even identified, the British Armed Forces, including the Royal Ulster Constabulary Police Force, buried the truth. Despite a mountain of evidence, including a witness who saw the bomb being planted and lit, the British state blamed the atrocity on the victims and allowed their proxies to escape into the night. I made the original request for information from PSNI in December 2020 under the Freedom of Information Act, specifically for the provenance and source of police lies to a high-level Joint Security Committee meeting soon after the massacre. At this meeting on 16th of December 1971, the then Chief Constable Graham Shillington and his Head of Special Branch, Assistant Chief Constable David Johnson, presented a police assessment to the Northern Ireland Prime Minister Brian Faulkner, the General Officer commanding the British Army at that time in Northern Ireland, Lieutenant General Sir Harry Tuzo, and Minister of State John Taylor, now Baron Kilclooney. This meeting and this assessment by RUC Special Branch and the Chief Constable included the lies, quote, "Circumstantial evidence indicates that this was a premature detonation and 2 of those killed were known IRA members, at least one of whom had been associated with bombing activities. Intelligence indicates that the bomb was destined for use elsewhere in the city." I have traced this disinformation to a secret agreement between the commander of the British Army in Belfast at that time, Brigadier Frank Kitson, and the Royal Ulster Constabulary within hours of the explosion. A log in the commander's diary for 39 Brigade proved that the then Brigade Commander Kitson informed Brigade staff at 1 a.m. on December the 5th, 1971, just over 4 hours after the bombing. Quote, "RUC have a line that the bomb in the pub was a bomb designed to be used elsewhere. Left in the pub to be picked up by the Provisional IRA. Bomb went off and was a mistake. RUC press office have a line on it and I should deal with them." The PSNI refused this request for the provenance and source of this false information. The Information Commissioner Office, the statutory authority with the jurisdiction to regulate the FOIA regime, upheld this refusal in February 2023. With the pro bono support of KRW Law and senior and junior counsel from 7 Bedford Row Chambers over in London, I appealed this decision at Tribunal in December 2023. My excellent legal team argued before members of an independent judicial panel why this material should be disclosed to the public. In a massive legal win for the families, the panel agreed that the PSNI and ICO decision was an error of law and ordered the Chief Constable to hand over, redact and withhold specific articles of evidence. This evidence included a pernicious lie we now know came directly from RUC Special Branch of a fictitious man with a suitcase. The Special Branch file for the attention of the Chief Constable at RUC headquarters is dated 6th of December 1971 and records the lie, quote, "In connection with the explosion at McGurk's Bar, the Catholic Ex-Servicemen's Association and the Provisionals are after a fellow named, redacted, for it. He was seen with a suitcase by them." The RUC knew that day that a witness had seen the actual bomber place the bomb in the entranceway of McGurk's Bar, light the fuse and escape in a car. The British Army files also prove that the morning after the massacre, 5th of December 1971, a British Army bomb expert had informed Kitson's brigade in headquarters Northern Ireland that the bomb was placed in the entranceway on the ground floor. The area is cratered and clearly was the seat of the explosion. Nevertheless, the outworkings of the secret agreement between RUC and Kitson were already in motion and the victims were being blamed publicly for the massacre. Meanwhile, RUC Special Branch's fictitious man with a suitcase completely disappeared again and did not feature in a list of other anonymous lies in RUC files that they have listed in this release of information. We know from other failed historic investigations by PSNI and the Office of the Police Ombudsman that this alleged intelligence regarding a man with a suitcase is undated, and PSNI cannot prove its provenance or origin, save to say that it came from British military intelligence. Nevertheless, PSNI was allowed to redact the actual report in the release of this information, which remains ludicrous. Special Branch simply injected this lie into the intelligence stream and then disappeared it. The cops are still hiding it today. We now know too that RUC also disappeared the car abandoned by the bombers nearby and 2 sets of fingerprints from it. This important win before the tribunal establishes that PSNI cannot or will not explain the secret agreement between the British Army Commander Frank Kitson and the RUC to blame the victims for the McGurk's massacre or the following false information disseminated by the British Armed Forces, including RUC. We have repeatedly asked successive Chief Constables to prove the police lies or admit that the police fabricated them. Each Chief Constable has failed. This important win also proves that PSNI not only withheld significant information from the historic investigations, courts and families, but also continues to withhold critical evidence in the mass murder of our loved ones. PSNI chooses to cover up for a sectarian police force in the past. We see little has changed between RUC and PSNI. Different name, same aim, collusion and cover up.
My name is Christopher Stanley. I'm a litigation consultant with KRW Law LLP in Belfast. I'm based in London and I've been working with Ciarán MacAirt on behalf of the McGurk's bombing families for many years in relation to accessing information regarding the bomb in 1971. The current application for information relating to the McGurk's bombing 71 was made in 2020 by Ciarán MacAirt. It is now 2025. This was one of many similar applications for information held by state agencies, in this instance the PSNI. Judgment was delivered in this application in February 2024 by the tribunal, but disclosure of the requested information has only been made in January 2025. I want to make at least 2 points on this. First, this disclosure further exposes the failure of state agencies, in this instance the PSNI, to recognise information retrieval and truth recovery as central tenets to peace and reconciliation in the post-conflict situation in Northern Ireland. The information disclosed last week confirms the policy of disinformation at the heart of the counterinsurgency operation throughout the course of the conflict. Further, it establishes further demands for exposure of loyalist and state collusion in the McGurk's bombing. Second point, the PSNI, at significant public expense, had dissembled throughout and sought to frustrate the FOIA process in this matter. It has admitted there is no prospect of a criminal investigation, which it cannot conduct in any event given the strictures of the Contested Legacy Act. It is now disclosed information which should have been in the public domain pursuant to previous legacy-based investigations, and which will now be pursued with the same intensity by the relatives of the bombing on behalf of those who cannot speak for themselves and whose memory is maligned because of the stench of collusion and cover-up so prevalent in British security force policy and practice throughout the course of the conflict. The Chief Constable has demonstrated both sense and courage previously in these legacy issues, including on the chilling effect of NCND, neither confirm nor deny, which is stated to be a policy, which was deployed as an excuse not to disclose the requested information in this FOIA application. The Chief Constable should be able to read this judgment when it is eventually published, as it has not yet been published. The tribunal found that the public interest in transparency and disclosure of victims outweighed the reasons for withholding information by the PSNI, which was upheld by the Information Commissioner's Office, the ICO. This is an important win for the relatives of the victims of the McGurk's bombing, but it's a very slow process, having taken 5 years to get this small amount of information, which further adds to the mosaic of collusion and cover-up, which mars truth recovery over the McGurk's bombing in 1971.